Hey, this is Cheryl Pullins. Welcome to our last video. I'm Cheryl Pullins from iCoachWomen.com, founder of the Iconic Legacy Boutique, where we educate ambitious and influential women entrepreneurs on how to show up with their vision and message as a preferred brand in the marketplace so that they can help more people expand their influence and elevate their income and live the life and lifestyle they love. So today on this last video, I wanted to actually share a little bit of my story about how I got into this branding space and how my brand has evolved. And I also am going to walk you through the, once again, walk you through the 4-part framework of my Branded Edge process or framework. I like to use the word framework. Framework has a bit more flexibility to it. I'm going to walk you through that framework just a little bit more, and then I'm also going to remind you about the Brand My Awesome program, a virtual mastermind, which is starting on March 24th. So here's just a little bit about my story in terms of how I got started. I could go back to when I was a little girl and how at the age of 2, I was adopted. At the age of 9, I was shot by a stray bullet. At the age of 12, I came home from school and found out that my next door neighbor's children were actually my sister and my brother. I could talk about how at the age of 18, I met my biological mother for the first time of my recollection. And also, I could talk about how I got married at the age of 23. I was married to a pastor for 14 years. That marriage ended in a very public and bitter divorce and custody battle. I could talk about how I spiraled out of control. Emotionally, I became depressed. I became very disconnected. I could talk about how I spent 3 days in the hospital on the mental floor because they thought I was going to commit suicide. I could talk about all of those things. I could talk about how I spent 25 years in corporate America doing human resources. That was my professional career. I could talk about all of that. And the reason I could talk about all of those things is because it's a part of my story. It's a part of who I am. It's contributed to who I have become as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a sister, as a friend. It's a part of who I've become as a voice to women who have had tragedy. I could talk about all of those things. I could talk about the soundtrack to my life and my story and how it parallels to the story and to the lives of many, many people, many women. I could tell my story in a way that fully aligns with you and your story because it's a part of who I am. It's a part of how I have been able to navigate and create the brand that I have today. I created it by telling my story. My story is significant in my journey and my evolution in creating the iconic legacy brand. Why? Because legacy is a big part of who I am. Legacy is important to me. It's important to me because I did not know my legacy. I learned a lot of my legacy along the way. I learned from my biological mother about my grandmother and my great-grandmother. I learned about, how, my great-grandmother came over on the sugarcane boat, but those are things that I didn't learn until I was an adult, fully grown woman with my own children. And as a result, legacy has become important to me. So when I talk about iconic legacy, it's not something that I conjured up. It's something that comes from the core of who I am. Because for so long, I lived without understanding my own legacy. I lived without being connected to my own legacy. The Iconic Legacy Boutique was birthed out of the fact of knowing that we all have a legacy that we all have something to leave as a deposit for generations to come. So when I talk about my story, just like your story, is an integral part of my brand. On the last video, I shared with you the story of Louis Vuitton, the story of Gabrielle Chanel, later known as Coco Chanel. I shared with you the story of Ralph Lifshitz, who later became Ralph Lauren, one of the most respected brands for luxury and fine living. I told you part of the story of one of my clients, Keandra Ward. They all have a story, and so do you. And one of the amazing things that you can do is weave your story into the story of your brand. And as you weave your story into the story of your brand, then the story of your brand weaves itself into the story of the lives of the people in your market. Your story is the differentiator. It's the point of connection. It's where you and your audience connect with one another. Because your story is what makes your brand relevant. Yes, you started with an idea that you wanted to make a difference in the world. You wanted to make somebody's life richer, fuller, freer, better. But it's the story that's the common thread. It's the story that allows people to live vicariously through you and your brand. It's the story that you tell about your brand and your life that leaves the legacy. When we think about people like Madam C.J. Walker and the legacy she left, is the story of how she became a self-made millionaire. It's the story behind it, because it's the story we tell. The power of telling your story in your brand is what differentiates you from every other person in your industry, every other brand in your industry. When you layer your story onto your brand and you tell that message, that's where the connection takes place. That's where the bonding happens, where people find you and they want to be a part of what you're doing because they know you get it, because you didn't just show up and arrive. You didn't read something out of a book and decide, oh, I'm just going to do this because it looks good, it sounds good. No, they connect with it because you have a story, and your story comes from the core of who you are, and your brand is created out of that story. I can't tell you how powerful it is when people start to learn about your story. My story of having an idea that I knew I wanted to do something greater in the world, but feeling as though I could no longer do it because here I was now, a divorced woman, 2 children, depressed, a failure at the very thing that I loved dearly, which was being married, but I was a failure. Looking at that failure and letting and allowing that failure to define who I was. Here I was, a woman with a 25-year human resources career in corporate America, feeling like a failure. Even as a mother, feeling as if I didn't do right by my children because my marriage to their father didn't work. So now here my children were from a broken home, the children of divorced parents, me feeling like a failure. But me deciding this isn't the end. This isn't final. My failure in these areas is not final. My failures are really just stepping stones to get me to a greater place, to get me to a greater position, for me to reach the ultimate place, my higher place of purpose in my life. But I wouldn't have been able to get there had I not had those failures. You have failures in your life. Of course you have. We all have. But it's not final. It's not the end. It's not over. Your failures are just the beginning. They're the entry points to the greater purpose that you've been sent here in the earth. Your creating of a brand is just a way to house and dress the greater purpose that you've been sent here on the earth. It's an evolutionary process. Branding is just a way to help you unearth what's in you so you can tell your story. So you can go from being this divorced, depressed woman feeling like a failure to making the decision that you were going to stand up and step in and help shift and change the lives of women worldwide. To then saying, you know what, I'm really going to hone in and I'm going to work with women entrepreneurs and help them build world-class brands so that they can leave a legacy in the world, so their legacy can have global impact, so what they put in the earth stays long after they're gone. That's my story. And I'm only just getting started. What's your story? What story do you have that you can share with the world? That the world can become a part of your story? That the world can grow and become who they're destined to grow and become because of your story? How can you use your story to shift the lives of millions? Just by having the courage and the confidence and the consistency to stand up and show up and tell your story. There is never, ever a reason to copycat or to do what someone else is doing in a way that they're doing it, because you have your own story. You have your own unique brand panache. And how do you get there? How do you discover it? Well, that's what we do in the Brand My Awesome program. We discover it, we create it by doing exploration, by doing excavation, by creating your brand experience, by creating your brand engagement. That's the 4-part framework. That's how we get there. And I want to invite you to take the journey. I want to invite you to take the journey to creating your world-class brand. The branded edge framework is just getting started. That's you just getting started. That's you just scratching the surface and digging up the foundation for building something that is world-class. And I want to help you do that. I would be honored and delighted to do that work with you. Remember, exploration, excavation, experience, and engagement. Brand experience is key to creating a world-class brand. You want to create an experience where people keep coming back for more and they're bringing other people. And that's the work I want to help you do. I am really, really excited. I hate to see the series come to an end, the video series come to an end, but the work is about to begin, and I want to invite you to do the work. This is Cheryl Pullins from iCoachWomen.com, founder of the Iconic Legacy Boutique, where we educate ambitious and influential women entrepreneurs to show up with their vision and message as preferred brands in the marketplace so they can help more people expand their influence and elevate their income to live a life and lifestyle they love. I hope to see you in the Brand My Awesome virtual mastermind program. Bye.